This is a typical ride we do. Takes us 90 minutes, 600 meters of up. The battery is about half done after that. So here we are at the end of a bike ride in Victoria, Australia. And here's how we are doing on battery power. So we're down to 26% of this battery, which is a 625 watt-hour battery. It was already a little discharge before I started, so we're going to see how we go with recharging it. So I already know that a mid-range BLUETTI unit like an EB150 will be easily big enough to recharge this bike battery. But what about the little baby? Could that do it? Well, in theory, no, because although it puts out enough watts to run the bike charger easily, it doesn't have very big capacity, only 268 watt hours. That'll probably be more like 250 in real life, and that's only going to fill up less than half of the e-bike battery. But what about if it was getting a nice dose of sun at the same time? Would it be able to keep pace? And could this tiny solar generator actually somehow fill up this e-bike up to 80%? Let's try it. Okay, so I've now plugged the charger and the battery for the e-bike in. Here's how it looks. And it's just started charging that battery up. As we can see, it's got to go from 26% upwards. I'm going to try and stop it around about 80%. The reason is that these e-bike batteries are designed to really do a boost charge up to about 80%, and then they charge quite a bit slower towards the end. So we're now getting 246 watts out, and that little BLUETTI PV120 is putting 99 in out of a possible 120. And the reason for that is, although it's a gorgeous sunny day here in Australia, it's quite hot. It's approaching 30 degrees centigrade, and solar panels, believe it or not, don't really like it when it's too hot. They work better on cool days. That's why I've got it over the grass. It's quite a bit cooler over the grass than it would be if it was on the tarmac. So let's see how we're doing here. We're down to 90% fairly quickly after 10 minutes. This unit is absolutely tiny. It is incredible to think that in there is everything that you need to create power out of effectively thin air. Of course, there's a battery in there, and that's good for 2,500 charges, so I could do this every day for 10 years and it would still be pretty much usable at 80% of its original capacity. Also, it's got a solar controller in there. There's no point having a battery without that. And it's got an inverter. In fact, it's got an AC inverter that's running on now, and a DC inverter. The DC inverter is, as you can see, able to power these typical USB ports, but also it's a USB-C which puts out 100 watts, which I was really amazed by. So that charges up a laptop in no time. That's really quite something to have that. And then the usual way of charging if you don't have solar is you just plug it into the main, and that charges up pretty quickly. And this is a good old car socket in case you want to run a fridge. Another final little note here before I leave the charger to do its thing for a while is the EB3A will actually accept 200 watts of solar power. I'm only able to put in 96 with the panel I'm using and the solar conditions I've got. But let's see how we go. Okay, now we'll have a little update. And the EB is now down to 29% of its power. The draw is reduced to 180, and the whole time we'll be getting about roughly 100 watts pretty much the whole time. And the battery now is somewhere between 60 and 80%. We know this on these giant batteries because it's flashing from this 3 out of 5. So I'm pretty hopeful we will get up to 80%, at which point I'll stop the test. It's close. We might just do it. The giant battery is approaching 80%. It's somewhere between 60 and 80, but I'd say it's pretty close to 80. And as you can see, the rate of discharge has slowed. This is, as I mentioned before, the feature of these e-bike batteries. The power starts to taper off as the capacity of the e-bike battery is approached. So like in one of those movies where the bomb defusal expert saves the day at the last few percent, the BLUETTI EB3A has done it. On its last 3%, you can now see that it's just ticking over, and the bike battery is now somewhere above 80%. So it's done it. What I'm going to do now is turn off the AC inverter. And I actually saw that I had the DC inverter on for this test as well, which I didn't need to have. And so it would have probably had a few more percentage points than I actually see it on now. And what's going to happen now is, of course, the EB3A will recharge itself. So I would now basically go out for a ride and leave this thing to charge itself up. And as we can see, in 2.6 hours it would be ready to go again. This is pretty significant. It means you can use this little unit, even with a small 120 watt solar panel, to recharge your bike over a lunch break from 26% to 80, which is enormously useful. That will give you a couple of hours of riding from this ridiculously tiny solar generator. Okay, there we go. E-bike precisely on 80%.